number of things. Let's have a synod where we listen really carefully to everything that's said, that we speak very honestly about how we feel, so we're not covering anything up. We get the arguments out there so that we can discuss them and come to the very best conclusions we can, instead of arriving as conservatives or liberals wanting to push our own court. Let's listen. And I think that's going on at this second meeting of the Synod on the Family.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to bring out the very best results. But of course, people will reduce it down to, will we give communion to people who are divorced and remarried?
Yeah.
Will we recognise a form of gay marriage? And that's not what the Synod is about. It's recognising where families are in this generation, how different they are around the world. What can we do to nourish family life? We know it's important. Now, what can we do that helps people prepare for marriage, to sustain their marriage through difficult times? What do we do to help people when marriages do break down? Are we going to push them outside and say you no longer belong because you failed? Or are we going to say, you've had a terrible experience, a very sad one. How can we in some way assist you? I think there could be a most wonderful positive outcome to this synod.
It's one of the... I actually have done a programme for Heaven's Road on the synod, the previous meeting. And each one that I've done, I kind of have said to the listeners, please be wary. Do not allow yourselves to be led by the media, because that's what they're superb at. And kind of one of my cries is really just I don't know how many meetings they intend to have with this synod. Obviously they're on the second one now, but let the synod do its work, and then whatever the report is at the end of that, we'll have a look at it and deal with it then. But I do think that the media are so powerful at the moment and would love to lead this particular one, because as you've said, it's kind of gay marriage and communion to divorced and remarried.
It's very easy, isn't it, to write a much shorter article saying there is a division between left and right, between conservatives and liberals, and it's going to fail on the following issues because there can't possibly be any agreement, and who's going to win, who's going to lose. And that's not allowing for the subtlety of this synod. Various cardinals and bishops at the synod have said that they have never experienced an atmosphere like it at any synod before, of people actually there looking for positive ways in which we may promote family life, may understand it for the needs it has in our modern world, and how best we may build a new theology and practice for our family where we're helping people to make the most of family life.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that I think that certainly we in the West, in the very wealthy areas of the West, we tend to look at something like the Synod and think, well, how is it going to impact on our kind of wealthy, area, the place where we live? When really, when you're talking about the family, it's such a complicated thing in our modern world. When you're dealing with something like the USA, very wealthy, to the poorest in Africa and Asia, it's an enormous difference between. But the synod is trying to deal with all of that, not just these, little media-led instances that they'd love you to kind of get on board with. And it's a bit of a bugbear for me, and I just hope that people will allow the synod, to meet and to do whatever they need to do, and however long it takes.
Yeah, and for all our sophistication and prosperity in the West, actually the family's having a very difficult time. There's so much breakdown of marriage. And you go to some of the poorest countries in the world, where I have the privilege of going with CAFOD to visit our partners, and you see actually a real strength in family. Maybe we've got something to learn from people who are on the margins in terms
Definitely.
of...
I agree with you completely.
And there's a real strength in family life wherever I go in the developing world. And something here that we could value as those bishops from those parts of the world speak out about their experience of family. Maybe we can learn something anew.
Much to think about there. Thank you. Now then, I know that you will have met the Holy Father at the the general audience of bishops, as you've already mentioned. I'm dying to ask, what's he like? I know we all have views on him from what we've seen in the media and on TV, but it's not kind of the same as meeting him up front, even if it's only, with a couple of hundred other bishops. But, what is he like? Because he comes across as an extraordinary man.
Yeah. I've met him 3 times.
Right.
The first one was when all the bishops met him, and he was friendly, and he's... The man, the MC had said, well, now, we're running very late, Holy Father, you've just arrived, you're over an hour late, so can we just perhaps have a picture together, and then we better get on to the next thing. And he said, no, this is the first conference of bishops I've met. I want to meet them. I want to say hello to them individually. And he spent a lot of time with us. And it was very easy, though there was a sense of formality because he'd only been Pope for a couple of months and we really hadn't got used to him at that stage. So there was a degree of formality which he was trying to push to one side, but it still stayed a bit formal, but very, very happy occasion. The next time was... in a general audience in St. Peter's Square, enormous crowd. He spoke off script most of the time. People were applauding him for what he was saying. I remember him. It was one of those occasions when he said something about the mercy and forgiveness of God, and he put his script to one side and he said, "Did you hear me? Did you hear what I just said? The mercy and forgiveness. We all stand in need of God's mercy and forgiveness. We're all sinners. Even the Pope. Yes, me, this Pope. I'm a sinner." And it was a wonderful. And at the end of that audience, the bishops were meeting him. We were sort of lined up and shook his hand. Now I went up to him and I said, "I'm an auxiliary bishop in Westminster Diocese." And immediately he said, "Oh, Vincent Nichols, he's your Archbishop, isn't he?"
Wow.
"Yes, I know." And there was no reason for Pope Francis to have known anything about my being there that day, but suddenly he knew that I was an auxiliary to Archbishop Vincent Nichols.
That's extraordinary.
It is. There were a couple of comments about football, but we don't need to go into that. But I must say that the ease, the warmth of the man, it was lovely. And whilst I was there was a gust of wind which blew his skull cap off, and he thought that was riotously funny. And it was just very easy. You wouldn't have thought that there were a couple of 100,000 people standing behind us. And photographers all around the place. It was lovely to see. And of course there was that characteristic as we shook hands to say goodbye, he said, "And pray for me," which he says so often to so many people, and he'd said it on that first balcony appearance when he was elected.
So he does seem to be the perfect kind of character that we see on the tellies. He's as charming as he seems to be. That's great to hear. Really.
And I don't know. I think he'd have to be that relaxed in order to be doing all that he's doing. If he felt that everything he went to was very formal, I think he'd be exhausted by now. But he so evidently enjoys meeting the sick, those public appearances where he can wave and smile at people. It's so natural, and then I think he draws strength from it, whereas it could be such a chore to go out and make another address. And now I think he's 79. He's got a partial lung. It's just, where does a man get that energy? But I think he's doing brilliantly.
Just as you were speaking there, it's just occurred to me, I wouldn't like to be the one who has to take over from him.
Well, I think we have to leave that to the Holy Spirit.
Indeed.
Every pope has been extraordinary in their energy and their leadership in their different ways. This man is doing it in his characteristic way, which is quite unique. Yes, let's hope we've got him for a long time and we won't need to know what the next man has to do.
Oh, please God. Now then, there's loads of things that I'd like to talk to you about, like his latest encyclical and the synod and one or two other things. But you have so graciously said that you will come back and do another recording with me.
Certainly. Be very pleased to.
That's great. Listen, Bishop John, thank you ever so much for your time. And I hope that the listeners of Heaven's Road FM and maybe of the Salford Diocese, because I'm going to try and push it across the diocese that we've had this interview, will have enjoyed listening to you and, perhaps tune in for the next one.
Well, I'd be very pleased to come back, and I've very much enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, once again, I would like to thank Bishop John Arnold for giving me some of his time today. It's always a great pleasure to have him here in the studio. I hope it's going to become a regular thing. Now, one of the things that I didn't do, which I normally do with all people that I interview, is ask them for a request of music to play at the end. So I am going to play a piece of music specifically for Bishop John, and this is the Negro Spiritual from Sir Michael Tippett's Child of Our Time. Until next time, God bless you all and keep the faith.